Hello, beloved ones, and welcome to Charting Your Course. This Valentine's Day, February 14th, 2021, I want to thank you for taking the time to explore with me this evening. And I have to tell you right up front, it's a little stormy down here in Florida, in Sarasota. And we know that when there is a problem with the weather, my internet doesn't work so well. So just be aware that if I have an internet problem, I will try to get back to you. As a matter of fact, let me just check one thing. Never had to do that before. I'm sorry, but I was trying to get my internet reset. So just so you know, if there is a problem, I will come back to you. Okay, you know I always do, but Sarasota gets really, really a little bit crazy when there's rain and storms and that kind of thing. So again, I want to thank you for joining me this evening. We're going to be discussing this wonderful, wonderful book, Marianne Williamson's Enchanted Love, The Mystical Power of Intimate Relationships. We're all looking for those magical relationships where there is harmony, where there is love and romance and commitment and partnership. We all want that. But we have to do some work in order to attract the right individual into our lives, the right soul, because love is soul work. And Marianne Williamson says partnerships exist at the highest level because the celestial staircase stops at a certain point. And we cannot climb farther until we find our beloved. And so we're on a journey here. We're souls. And we've taken on this physical body. And this physical body houses our soul personality. The soul personality is how the soul expresses itself in this incarnation. We come with lessons that we need to learn. And so in our intimate relationships, those people that we attract are our mirrors and our windows. And I know I've told you this a bazillion times, and I will probably tell you another bazillion times, because it is so important, because it really is the key to understanding why we're here and how these relationships come to be. Your beloved serves as a mirror because they reflect back to you who you are. Sometimes we don't like what gets reflected back to us. We see that we have a lot of work to do. And then sometimes it is just a confirmation of the best of us. And that's how our beloved one becomes our mirror. The other aspect is that the beloved one becomes a window. A window opens up a more expansive view to the world outside. So we all come with different experiences from various lifetimes. And when we unite with another soul, we begin a journey of exploration, of experimentation, and those experiences assist us in completing our mission on Earth in this lifetime. And that's a tall order. And I know not everyone views relationships in that way, but I'm just sharing with you the mystical approach to relationships. And those of you who are on the path, who are seeking that unity with divinity, you're actually searching for the true beloved, because divinity is the true beloved. And that's why throughout history, the mystics have always referred to the relationship between themselves and divinity as a divine love affair. The ecstasy that is felt by the mystic as he attunes or she attunes with that one source of all that is truly transcendental. And that is what we all seek in that union with another human being in an intimate relationship. And our success in experiencing that comes with our ability to master the laws that govern the universe. So it does no good to read a lot of books, but not to apply what you learn. And this one is tricky. It is the hardest lesson, yet it is the one that we all long to master, even though we may not realize it at the time. So last week, we talked about certain truths, 11 truths that Marianne Williamson points out in her work. And I would just like to review those with you, just in case you were not present last week. The first truth is learning to live in the moment. And many times when we begin a relationship, we're already trying to predict what's going to happen in the future, rather than allowing the relationship to unfold like a rose. And even though a romance may blossom into a marriage, many times those marriages do not continue to bloom because the two individuals are living in different moments. There is not a connection between the two. And so they begin to grow apart. So learning to live in the moment is what allows us to sustain our intimate relationships, not to be predicting about the future, but to be present and aware and paying attention to that beloved one that is in our presence. And this is the significance of prayer and meditation together, because that allows you to come on a common ground and to reinforce your relationship at that time. The second truth she talks about is to know that we right the wrongs from the past through compassionate living in the present. None of us are perfect. And when we come into a new relationship, often we bring with us all the baggage from the previous relationship, and that does not help us. So you can't go back in time and right the wrongs that you've done, but by compassionate living in the present, bringing yourself to give in the fullest, being fully aware and fully committed, is how you correct that past karma. You cannot go back, you can only go forward. And so many times we don't learn the lessons of the past and we repeat the same patterns over again. So of course we don't have success in our relationships. So by living compassionately in the present, we can move forward in our evolution. And I will apologize right from the very beginning, because I can only speak about what I have experienced, and that is heterosexual relationships. But more importantly, what we're talking about is the principle of duality. And the universe exists because of the interchange between positive and negative everything. Everything comes into creation by duality, and this cannot be denied. Humans can make choices, and that is their right to do so. But when I'm talking about duality, and when I'm talking about positive and negative and male and female, I'm talking about universal laws. We all know that an electron, which is that feminine force, and the proton, which is the masculine force, come together with a proton, which is a neutral force, and that is what create atoms, which are the building block of matter, the building blocks of matter. And matter would not exist without this interchange between the positive and the negative, or the male or female. So please understand that I'm speaking in mystical terms, in esoteric terms, and I'm not making any judgment on anyone's life. So I hope we got that out of the way, because that's very important. When we're in a relationship, one of the truths that we must honor is to respect the mystery that brings us together. Many times we think, how in the world did that person get into my life? What was I doing? What was I thinking when I married that person? Or what was I thinking when I got in that relationship? Well, the truth of the matter is that we are all vibratory beings, and we attract to us what we are. And until we understand that, we cannot change our relationships. So just keep that in mind. And it is a mystery that can be solved. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit later. But you have to honor that mystery, because the universe is bringing to you what you need in order to successfully complete your life lessons. There are no mistakes. You have to look at that individual and say, okay, they've showed up. Now, what is this about? And you don't necessarily have to get into a sexual or intimate relationship just because somebody crosses your path. That's the other thing. And I have always been very careful in my journey in the world as a woman. When a particular man has come into my life, before I would allow myself to get physically involved, I wanted to know who that person was. Where did they come from? What are their hopes? What are their dreams? What is their education? What is their philosophy of life? Are they a spiritual person? It wasn't about the physical, like, ooh, baby, you so fine. That did not enter into the equation. And so many times we allow our physical desire to dominate our choices in terms of a partnership with a mate. And that is not mystically wise. We also have to listen to the wisdom of the heart. And so many times we know in our heart that we're not in a good relationship, that we're not happy. But sometimes we try so hard to make it work because we don't want to be alone, or because we think that there's something wrong with us and we start to intellectualize it rather than just listening to the wisdom of the heart. I remember I was engaged to be married, and the individual that I was engaged to began to show himself, which is what often happens, because by law, the universe is going to show us what we're getting into if we pay attention. But we usually don't pay attention. And people get so swept up in the whole idea of having a wedding. And so many people get swept up in the shame of walking out of a wedding. And so they proceed in a way that is not for their greater good. And we both know that so many people have gotten married because of pregnancies, not because they were necessarily ready, not because that was the person that they really wanted to marry, or there sometimes family pressures. We know that Prince Charles, even though he married the beautiful Princess Diana, that was not the love of his life. And Camilla was always there, and they're together today. So we have to look at this mystery that brings us together, and we have to listen to the heart. And I remember saying to this individual a few weeks before we were going to get married, I said, this is not going to work if you continue with this kind of behavior. Now, if you have to say that, you should not be going ahead and getting married. But this was a mystically oriented person, and I was thinking about how I could be of service. I knew why he came to me. He wanted my assistance. He wanted my love. He wanted my attention, but I did not have to marry him. But I felt that I should, because I was always thinking about what I could do for someone else and not what they can do for me. There has to be a reciprocity. I'm a great giver, but I've only in my later years come to understand that I have to be a good receiver. And so I have the right to ask for what I want, and I have the right to receive what I am capable of giving. And we'll get into some specifics of that as well. We have to seek God's grace. And I know that sounds like a religious term, but basically what that means is that we have to ask divinity for guidance and direction. And to say, if I'm not doing the right thing, if I'm not seeing this clearly, please help me to see it for what it really, really is. And sometimes we're afraid to do that because we already know it's not right. We already know that's not right. But we just don't want to face it for many reasons. But when you're on this mystical path, you have to look very closely and very seriously at these souls that come into your life, because your spiritual maturation, your maturity, your spiritual maturity depends on your linking yourself with the right individual. And when you don't, you both suffer. There is a saying in the Bible about being unequally yoked, and many times, especially women, it's in our nature to want to help, to want to lift up, to want to care for. And so many times we make the wrong choices because we know that that person needs our help, and we can appreciate them and we can see their potential. But that's not the healthiest way for us to give ourselves. It's too much of a sacrifice. And so we have to look at this very, very seriously as we move further in our growth. We have to create an emotional safety for ourselves and for each other. And many times when we get in a relationship, we're so eager to please. We're so eager to bring into that relationship a sense of partnership and being a team player that sometimes we stop ourselves from expressing how we really feel. And anytime you're in a relationship and you can't express how you really feel, then you're not safe. And that often happens with individuals who end up in abusive relationships. The first time your partner strikes you physically, that's the time you need to go, because you're not emotionally nor physically safe. There's no such thing as there being a single outburst. It will happen again and again and again, regardless of your begging and pleading or the other individuals begging and pleading. It is an alarm that goes off that says you are not safe. So you have to establish this emotional safety for yourself and also for the other person. Sometimes the other individual has a very bad temper and they will begin to act out with that temper. And it's not a good thing. And it's very, very dangerous for the other person. So that is also something that we have to take into consideration. That is just a truth. We also have to avoid the temptation to judge and to find fault. And this is a tricky one. Because when we're in a relationship with someone and we see that they're not able to do something or they don't have the same capacity that you have, don't always be finding fault with them or just telling them that they're wrong or they should be doing it this way or that way. There has to be a way to communicate with one another and also to set an example, to show by example what the standard can be in a relationship. So many times after people get married and they're living with each other day after day after day, they just start judging and they find fault with everything. Nothing is ever right. That doesn't work. That relationship is not going to be able to be successful. And that is why partners go outside of the relationship to seek someone who appreciates them for who they are, who is not constantly judging them and making them feel incompetent or unworthy. So this is one of the reasons why relationships break up and marriages are unsuccessful. We all come into this world broken in one way or the other. We're here to become aware of the karma that we've brought with us so that we can learn these lessons, and by living compassionately in the present, we can begin to do that healing. We can increase our awareness. We can strengthen our weaknesses. That is what it is all about. And we all need a partner who can hold us and understand that we're broken. Everybody's broken. Nobody comes here without having had some kind of emotional trauma. And that is where the kindness and compassion and patience comes in our relationships. And if you're not willing to do that, if you're not willing to cradle your beloved, then you're not going to be able to maintain a relationship. I told you last week that if I'm in a relationship and there's some kind of disagreement, I want to discuss it while I'm sitting on my beloved's lap. I do not want to put distance between us, because what happens, we get angry and we start backing up, and then we start screaming and yelling at each other because the energy is pulling us apart. But when you're sitting or standing face to face, you can't be doing all that screaming and yelling without realizing that you're creating this negative force field. So if we're going to argue, well, there will be no arguing. We will discuss. We often let things escalate unnecessarily because of our ego. We want to be right. We want to prove that we know more. And that is not what the most important thing is in a relationship. It doesn't matter who's right or wrong. What matters is how you're able to resolve the disharmony or the disagreement. That's what's most important. And a very important truth is that we have to pour on the support and approval and bless and heal one another. We have to look for the good things in the individual. We have to support them in their hopes and their dreams. You know, you may have married a man who was working at a prominent company and making lots of money, and then he might decide that he wants to start his own business, or that he wants to become an artist, or he wants to become a musician. And you're like, what? Why are you going to do that? I didn't sign on for that. That's when you really have to look at the kind of relationship that you have, because we all grow and change and become aware of our heart's desires. That's one of the core experiences in an intimate, a truly mystical, intimate relationship. You begin to shine a light through the way that you look at that person so that they can see themselves. They can become aware of what makes them happy because of the harmony that exists between you. So your love may spark off his creativity, and he will want to express that creativity and not want to have to worry about the money. Or she may want to quit working and begin to have children, because you have inspired her to want to experience motherhood and bringing together a family. So this is why communication is so important between the two of you. There has to be a constant communication, a constant checking to see where you are in your life, a constant checking to see, are we still on the same page? Are we still on the same path? And you plan your future together. And if you don't do that, you're going to grow apart, and your relationship is not going to be successful. And that is often what happens with high school sweethearts or college sweethearts. You're just beginning to get a sense of yourself. You're beginning to explore the world. You don't even really know what you want to do with your life. There are lots of people that are like that. But as they learn and live and grow, they get closer and closer to their core, and they realize what makes them happy. We know that there's such a thing as midlife crisis, and this just doesn't happen to men. It happens to women too. You realize that you get a certain age, you're 35 and you're 40 years old, and you're looking at your life and saying, what have I been doing? This doesn't make me happy. I've become ill because of all the stress, or I've started taking drugs, or I've gained weight, or I have migraines. All kinds of things happen to us that let us know that we're not in a safe place, we're not in a healthy place, and we have to make an adjustment, or we will not continue to live. And we know that many people lose their lives because of heart attacks. Why? Working too hard, not getting enough rest, not taking care of the physical body, developing bad habits that lead to their early demise. And so, in a truly intimate relationship, the mystical power of blessing and healing one another is tantamount. It must be in place in order for divinity to be at the center. I have been very blessed in my life to have had relationships that were truly centered on the divine. And we get those tests. That's the other thing that happens in our relationships, is that we grow to a certain point, and then in order for us to get to the next level, we get tested. And I was in a relationship with a man who was younger than I. I never knew his age because he wouldn't tell me, but I thought he was around my age, but he was younger. And every night before we went to sleep, we held each other and we prayed so that God went to sleep in our bed. And I loved that. That was such a blessing. And once you've ever had that, you are never the same. Never, ever. Because it is such an ecstatic experience to know that you're bringing divinity into the center of your relationship. And that is really what tantric sex is all about. You may or may not have heard of it, but I've mentioned it several times. And it's alchemy. The sexual intercourse between a man and a woman is an alchemy that changes one another when one is aware. When you meditate with your beloved, you move to a completely different level in your relationship. And it is a wonderful thing. There's an exercise where you simply sit across from your beloved and you just look at each other. You just gaze at each other. And most people can't do that. They get uncomfortable. They get embarrassed. But it is said that the eyes are the windows of the soul. And we also know that our eyes emit energy. When someone looks at you with hate, you feel it. When someone looks at you with love, you feel it. There is an energy that is transmitted through our eyes, through our touch, through our voice. And that's an excellent exercise to sit across from your beloved and just to gaze into each other's eyes. It is a mystical experience when it's done correctly. It is a way of connecting with the energy of that other until there is no other. You just become the one. We have to be able to forgive each other. We're going to make mistakes. And I know that infidelity is a hard one to come back from. Just means that that individual allowed their physical senses to dominate their spiritual senses. And so they get caught up in the physical sensations. They get trapped on the animal level rather than uniting on that spiritual level. And so if you're going to stay in a relationship, there has to be a forgiveness. And that's a hard thing to do when someone has been unfaithful. And I have to say that I tried it, but very, very painful. because that other individual, I have found, will often repeat that behavior because they think that you are accepting of it. And once you say, no, I will not share you, then that's the end of that relationship. So yes, there does have to be forgiveness, but you have to be discerning about whether or not that individual is worthy of your staying. You can forgive them, but you can also move on. And I have kept a number of my friendships, because it's always about friendship first for me. And we've remained friends, but it's like we can't be in an intimate relationship because I don't trust you. And that's not what I want. So those are 11 truths that we need to be aware of. And I did post them in the summary last week. So if you go back to the recording of last week, you will see it in the notes there, those 11 points, because I feel that they're really, really important to take into consideration. The reason why I love Marianne Williamson's writing is because she combines spirituality and poetry and just plain hard psychological and emotional facts that allow us to really gain insight into who we are and how we think. So many times we're so busy looking at the other individual that we're not looking at ourselves in relation to that other individual. That is why it is called a relationship. And I will tell you an exercise that you can do a little bit later that will help you understand how you can work with this. I talked about Shaka Khan last week. She had a wonderful thing called Through the Fire, a wonderful song called Through the Fire. And Marianne wrote a wonderful, wonderful piece about that fire of love. Fire is a mystical image that has been used for centuries. When we are attracted to someone, we say, ooh, she's hot or he's hot. That's what the kids say these days. Everybody's hot. Everybody's on fire. Or when people fall in love, you know, they have this burning and this yearning sensation. So many of the ways that we describe our relationships have to do with fire. And so fire has long been a symbol for love. And Marianne Williamson wrote, in talking about these truths, I warn you, this will not be easy. I warn you, this will take some work. I warn you, love will burn you up. Are you ready to be burned? Or would you rather just grow old? I love that. So many times as we advance in age, we've had bad relationships, we've been married, divorced, engaged, disappointed, and you say, I'm done. I'm not doing this anymore. But if you're honest with yourself and you're asking for divine direction in what you should be doing in your life and how you should be doing it, many times someone will get thrown into your path to snatch you up and set you on fire. And we talked about that last week, about how that we have to go through the fire with one another. And I'm going to read this quote that I read last week also. I wanted to give you a good review because all of this fits in together. She says, anytime there is a chance for deep love, there is standing in front of that love a wall of fire. That fire might take the form of something burning within you, an inner condition, or it might take the form of an outer circumstance. But there is never love without fire. To the mystic, the presence of the fire does not say, go away. To the mystic, the presence of that fire says, here, if you are strong enough to take it, is love. And we often don't realize that when we get onto this path, we come across people on our journey that we're not necessarily physically attracted to, because we're working on another level and we're not even aware that when you start on this path, your vibration changes and you begin to attract those who can assist you in your work. And when you encounter these individuals and you just see them as an interesting person and you may begin to speak with them, but you're not sexually attracted to them at all. But you find that the more you speak to them, the more you want to spend time with them, right? Excuse me. And then you find yourself wanting to get to know them better. And then you find yourself beginning to love that person. And it's like a shock. It's like, well, how did that happen? I certainly did not intend that, or I didn't see that coming. And that is how it works on the mystical path. When you begin to vibrate at a certain level, you are no longer at the mercy of what others would consider coincidences. You become aware that every person that crosses your path for a reason, and you had better pay attention. It would certainly behoove you to do so. And if you don't, guess what? Another person is going to be sent that has a lot of those same characteristics. You're going to get the lesson whether you take it the first time it comes around, or if you take it the second time it comes around. And that second time it comes around, you're like, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? I've been through this before. This person is familiar to me. Why do I have to do this again? Well, obviously you didn't complete your work. You didn't complete your lesson. Or sometimes you find that someone that you were in a relationship with, you split up with that person, and then 5 years later, 10 years later, 15 years later, 20 years later, you meet that individual again, and there's a recognition of one another. You've changed, you've grown, you've matured spiritually and emotionally and psychologically, and then you can see each other clearly. That's how the universe works. The universe is always working to bring you that love that will assist you in your aspiration to continue growing and climbing that celestial staircase. So many times when we get on that mystical path, we often use it as an excuse to not have intimate relationships. I'm not interested in that. I'm just going to live my life, and all I want to do is learn how to astral travel. I'm devoted to my studies, and that's all I want to do. I don't want to be in a relationship. Well, you're stopping yourself from growing. And I was so disappointed when I came into the Rosicrucian order, right? because I had been celibate, I was a vegetarian, and so I thought, oh, finally, it was like I would be able to go into like a monastery, but in the modern world. And Rosicrucianism is not like that at all. It's like you have to be a part of the world. You have to do your work in the world. And you are not to be an ascetic. You're not a monk. You're not a nun. You're not supposed to live in a cave. And we kick and we scream and we scratch and we bite. Say, please. I don't want to be in a relationship. It's too hard. I just want to chant. I just want to do yoga. I just want to do my vowel sounds. I just want to read. And it's like, nuh-uh, baby, that's not going to happen. So just get ready. So be aware of that. I think I told you the story last week about one of my beloved sorors who at the age of 75 said, I'm done. I'm not having any more relationships. This is it. I'm through with men. And I laughed and I said, you don't get to determine when it's over. As long as you're breathing, there is still work to be done in that area. And don't think you're going to get away with that. And sure enough, at 75, she met this man who just turned her upside down. She had never had a truly romantic relationship. He wanted to hold her hand. He wanted to do all these romantic things. And she was like, oh, he makes me so mad. I don't want to really be feeling this way. And I'm like, well, sorry. That's part of your lesson. And needless to say, now she's over 80 and they're still in a relationship. so, so if you're really serious about this work, I call it a cosmic setup. You cannot escape it. So you might as well study and come to understand what it means. Many of us have been monks and nuns before, and we're very comfortable with that. And we long for that isolation and that seclusion, but that's not what we come into for this lifetime. And so the sooner we realize it, the easier it becomes. Marianne Williamson says, the world gives away prizes for many things. There's a prize for the best everything that anyone can imagine. But the only prize for the artist at love is the thrill of knowing you've made it through the fire to the other side. Every relationship is like walking through a fire. There is no worldly prize that can match the thrill of this accomplishment and the smile it brings to two people's faces. The thrill of knowing that the fire is behind you, that the metal in your heart is now turned to gold, makes a relationship a sacred chalice, a sacred cup of gold. That is what every relationship is. It is an alchemy. So whenever two elements come together, both are changed. They do not remain the same. And that is the purpose of relationship. We cannot grow until we find that partner that we can work with. She says, humanity's romantic energies are ready for that chalice. We have the water, we just don't have the cup. We have that emotional yearning, we have that emotional desire, but we don't have a cup to put it in because we have to make that cup with our very being, with our communication, with our interactions. We need a cup in order to pour those emotions in order to see the reflection of divinity. That is our purpose in these relationships. Marianne says, a civilization that doesn't acknowledge the sacred in any meaningful, practical way, but rather leaves it in a completely dry and sexless context, has no guidebook for sacred romance. It doesn't see the divine in most anything truly human. So how could it see the divine in the most human thing in the world? Oh, I just love that. It doesn't see the divine in most anything truly human. So how could it see the divine in the most human thing in the world? We all desire to be loved. We all desire to experience divinity. And it's through those intimate relationships that we are able to accomplish that. The other thing that I love about Marianne Williamson is how she incorporates prayer into this beautiful book. And I know that I read this to you last week, but I'm going to read it to you again. Dear God, I used to pray to you because I was lonely, but then you came to me and I was lonely no more. Then I prayed to you to make me better, and you came to me and healed my heart. Now I ask you, dear God, for a glorious mission. May I contribute to the life of another in the deepest way, the most holy way, the most loving way, that together we might serve you more. May I help a beloved grow closer to you. May a beloved help me grow closer to you. May I delight in that partner, and my partner delight in me, that your light, which unites us, might light up the world. Thank you, God. Amen. Have you ever thought of an intimate relationship as a glorious mission? To bring another soul closer to divinity, and for that soul to bring you closer to divinity, to help them accomplish their life mission as they assist you in accomplishing yours on the mystical path. That is our goal, even though we may not truly realize it. I just feel the need to review some of these things that were discussed last week, or some of these passages that I read, because just because you hear something once doesn't mean you get it. And today is a day where people are tuned in to the idea of love and relationship. And so the energy is different today than it was last week. So forgive me if I'm repeating some of these things, but I'm being told that we need to hear this again, that we need to consider it in this energy that is present today in the world, where people are focused on love, whether they're in a relationship or longing for a relationship. And whenever we are experiencing or listening or learning something in a particular vibratory field, the vibration in that field determines how deeply it can seep into us. That's why I wanted to do a second session, but I can see that it's just important before we get into the new stuff to review some of the things that we went through last week. She says that there is no way to make that journey without divine illumination to light our way. There is a holy reverence to love's deeper enchantments, giving meaning to its joy and also to its pain. Sacred understanding holds our hearts together, supporting us as we support each other in climbing the stairs to our higher self. Let me read that again. Sacred understanding holds our hearts together, supporting us as we support each other in climbing the stairs to our higher self. You need a partner to do that if you wish to have a certain level of divine experience or heaven on earth. And that is what relationship is intended to be. We all long for it. We may lie and pretend that we don't, but we do. It's a sacred gift to be able to share that. And I can tell you from experience that it really does accelerate your mystical growth because of that balance. You know, Rosicrucian used sound. Of course, in yoga, you use sound. And mystics throughout the ages have used sound. But in working with the male and female energies together, there is an amplification of that sound and that vibration that takes place when males and females are doing that work together. And I can tell you, because I've done that work, I've done work that I actually realized was not mystical because there wasn't that balance there. Having that balance makes a difference. When I joined the Rosicrucian Order and I was able to then be able to experience sound and meditation in that group experience, it was so balancing for me, and I could feel myself changing. I could feel that balance making a difference. And if we can just kind of think about that and allow it to happen, we will find what Marianne says is this: it is our medicine when the heart is breaking, feeling that the labor we are in, trying to birth our own souls, is far too hard, and we will die if we go on. Invisible forces minister to us during our transfiguration, our change from the small self to the one self. Love comes to slay what needs to be slain in us in order for something new to emerge. Yeah, it can be a battle, truly. That very individual who has been brought into your life, who seemed so perfect, at some point on your journey, you start burning each other up in a different way. You begin to see those unpleasant things about yourself, your selfishness, your judgmentalness, always judging, always finding fault, your impatience, your issues with anger. All these things begin to surface as you get closer and closer to another human being. Now, when you are by yourself, you don't really get all that, right? Because you're by yourself. So it doesn't happen. So what do we do? If we're in this situation and we're waiting for the one to come, or we're in this situation where we're not happy with the one that we have chosen. How do we make those changes? And I have to tell you that I guess I was in my late 20s. Maybe I was 30 by then. And I had moved to New York, and I was working as a reporter. And I used to sneak out and go dancing, because dancing has always been my medicine. And I went to this club, and I was dancing, and this man approached me. I noticed that he had a limp. There was some kind of deformity with his leg. But he came over and he began to speak to me. He was so intelligent. I was mesmerized by his level of intelligence. And I said, I can't believe I'm standing in this club having this kind of conversation. And so he asked me if I would go out on a date with him. And so I said yes, because I was just really intrigued by him, and he was a very nice person. I wasn't necessarily attracted to him physically, but I was intrigued by him. And he took me to the Metropolitan Museum in New York. Well, that absolutely blew my mind, because I certainly did not expect to have that kind of stellar experience. So we went to the Met, and we looked at art, and then we went up to the rooftop garden. And I can't remember if it was wine or champagne. I just know that I was drinking something and looking out over the glorious skyline of New York City, and just having this wonderful conversation, and just being swept up in the beauty of that energy of art and nature. And of course, you know that there is a pyramid. It's called, well, no, it's an obelisk. Cleopatra's Needle is, or is that? Yeah. I think it's Cleopatra's Needle that's at the Met, at the Metropolitan Museum. And so there's an energy at the Metropolitan Museum, and also at the Natural Museum. I can't remember the name of it now, but it'll come to me. But when you go to those kind of places, there's this energy of discovery, and you're intrigued by not only nature, not only the art, not only watching history. The Natural Museum of History, that's it, in New York on Fifth Avenue. They're both on Fifth Avenue. But having that experience with that man has stayed in my memory. It was one of the most romantic dates that I ever went on, and it was not romantic. That was what was interesting. It was on such a high level that it was a spiritual experience. And then he said something to me that I have never forgotten, and I have followed it to this very day. He looked at me and he says, God chooses my women. I looked at him in astonishment, because he was following this energetic instinct rather than a physical one. And I was just amazed at that statement. God chooses my women. We had a friendship. It never became romantic. And I think because he had a deformity, and so a lot of women were not willing to engage him because of that. Well, they missed an opportunity. But at any rate, we never had an intimate relationship, but I never forgot that. God chooses my women. And from that day forward, I said, yeah, God chooses my men. So that means I have to pay attention to the men who are crossing my path, not to allow myself to look at a physical body that looks pleasing or to be flattered by some sweet talker or to be mesmerized by some man who could dance from here to heaven. I had to listen for that still small voice to say, oh, you need to pay attention to him. Oh, did you just hear what he said? Oh, do you see the way he's looking at you? There's a way that you can look at someone with lust, and they know you're looking with lust. You know that they're just into the body. That's what they want. That's where they're after. But there are those who can look at you and you can tell that they're really looking at you, wondering, who is that soul? What did they come here for? And so I began to cultivate that. And I still operate by that today. Marianne Williamson says, there is so much more than sex on vacation, a night to remember, or a power struggle between romantic partners. Sacred romance is the call of the soul, a bid for life in spite of it all. Let me read that again. Sacred romance is the call of the soul, a bid for life in spite of it all. It is nothing less than an assignment from God. Just think about that. Have you ever had a sacred romance? Have you ever come to the realization that this person has come into my life for a reason and I better pay attention? Sometimes we only realize it too late. And I think that is one of the greatest values of Marianne Williamson's work. This book is a blueprint. And it tells you poetically and spiritually and just in plain English how you need to begin to shift your thinking. Because most people don't think of a relationship as a relationship with divinity. It's a person, right? But that person carries the divine spark of the divine. So do you. And when those two sparks come together, it creates a flame, which is divinity burning between you. All love is a fire. So that symbol of fire as the essence of divinity. And there's so many quotes in the Bible about divinity and fire. And in many cultures, there is that use of that symbolism. So the other thing that I really like about this book is that Marianne has conversations with divinity. And so she says that, we need to be listening for that conversation that divinity is trying to have with us. So she says, in quotes, God speaking to you, I have chosen someone to heal you, he says, and I have chosen someone for you to heal. Enter the temple and expose your wounds. Be not afraid, My spirit will heal both of you. Together you shall receive new life. That is what a sacred romance is. We're all broken. We all have wounds, but when you come together with a consciousness of being a healing presence, a supportive presence, a protective presence in someone else's light and life, divinity is present. And you begin to feel that. And you begin to know that beyond a shadow of a doubt. And this is my favorite prayer, I think, in the whole book. She says in this prayer, "Dear God, may the man I am with emerge into his greatness. May the woman I am with emerge into her glory and her joy. May we leave behind our broken selves and emerge into the light. Heal our wounds and bless our dreams. Thank you, God. Amen." To help a man emerge into his greatness, to help a woman emerge into her glory, there's no greater gift that you can give than to be supportive of that other soul who is here to do their work. And many times they don't even realize their capabilities. The man that I used to pray with, I was just starting to learn calligraphy. So I would be lying across the bed practicing my calligraphy because I've been a doodler all my life. And he would lie on the bed with me and he would be doodling. He had the worst handwriting. It looked like chicken scratch for real. But over the course of our relationship, by simply playing with me, he began to develop a beautiful signature. And even though we didn't stay together because he was unfaithful to me, we still remained friends, and he took great pride in his signature. And he said, "I really want to thank you for that because everybody comments on my signature." Just that one little thing, just the signature, but a signature says a lot. People always notice my handwriting, they always have. It's an expression of who I am long before I became a calligrapher. And it was my 6th grade teacher who said, "You have beautiful handwriting. Keep practicing." And that is why I became a constant doodler, because she recognized that within me. And so I was able to share with him something that I had mastered on one level and was moving to another level, and he did it with me. When you do things together, when you share things together, you have no idea what you can draw out of another individual. They begin to do things that they didn't think that they could do. I was working in television, and so he decided that he wanted to go in to learn television production. And so I helped him get into school, and he studied it. And then he decided that he didn't like the hours. It's a very, very demanding business. And he actually ended up being a minister, which did not surprise me because he was really a God-centered man. And he was discovering himself. Women loved him. He was so charming and so much fun and so mesmerizing and very romantic that women were always after him, and I knew that. But I don't compete with anyone. And if a man finds someone that makes him happier than me, then he has my blessing to go right ahead. But usually they come back and say, you know what? That wasn't really what I wanted. Well, it's like I'm gone already, you know? I've already moved on to another level. That is what I was always seeking to understand and how I wanted to operate. And yes, it is the Museum of Natural History in New York. There's the Metropolitan Museum of the Art and then the Museum of Natural History, where we have all of the examples. I'm just got a flash of the big blue whale that's in one of the main rooms in the Museum of Natural History. Anyway, that's a really great date to do with, to take someone on, because you'll find out a lot about them. You'll find out if they're interested in the natural world. You'll find out if they're interested in beauty. You'll find out if they're interested in nature. And there's also the planetarium that's there. So many times, you know, we go out into a social situation, you know, we're either dancing or we're going into, you know, we're going to a bar, but we don't go and have those intimate relationships, those explorations into the universe. That's when you find out where people really are. That's where you find out if you have the same interest. And it will help you in being much more selective, no matter how old you are. So I said I was going to share something very practical with you. Let me do my time check. So once you come to this understanding that a relationship, an intimate, sacred relationship, is about healing and blessing each other, then you need to check yourself. And I discovered this exercise way back in the early 80s. I started doing this. I took an index card, and on one side, I wrote down all of the qualities that I wanted in a partner. And then I flipped that card over, and I wrote down those qualities that I had that matched what I wanted. It's a great exercise. Because sometimes we have this idea about the kind of individual that we want. But if we can't match those qualities, then we're not going to attract the right person. Sometimes we're so out of touch with who we really are, what we really desire, what we know, what we understand, what's important to us. What happens after you have sex? You go out, you have dinner, you go on a few dates, you have sex. It's what comes after all of that that determines whether or not you can stay in that relationship. So if you begin by making an assessment of what it is you want in a partner, and then you flip that card over and you see if you can match those qualities, then you become aware of the kind of energy that you are putting out into the world, because we are magnetic beings and we attract individuals to us onto that stage of our romantic life because the energies are in resonance with one another. If you stop looking with your eyes and stop making assessment based on the car, the clothes, the job. That's what you see on all these dating sites, right? I was telling you about the men who used to contact me, and thank God, in 2 weeks, in 2 weeks, I've only gotten one friend request from a military man. The phone calls have stopped. The emails have stopped. I have just been doing a happy dance because I was so tired of trying to be nice. And I realized that, and I just kept saying, God, please, I want to move on with my life, and I need an individual who is compatible with me. You know that I'm not looking for money. They would tell me how much money they had. They owned a private plane. They had this job, all of these things that they thought I would be impressed with. And I wasn't interested in any of it at all. And so I said, if I'm not doing the right thing, then tell me what I need to change. To be perfectly honest with you, I had just said, forget about it. I'm too old. I'm not interested in a man, blah, blah, blah. That's what I did, to be perfectly honest. And divinity said, that's not going to happen. So, boom, they put me together with someone to observe. And a most unlikely person. And I'm like, why in the world would you put that person there? But that person was an excellent mirror. And I said, yes, I want that quality. Yes, I want to learn those things that he knows. Yes, I need that kind of person who is reliable and even-tempered and has a sense of humor and all of these things. But I didn't see how I was going to be able to be in a relationship with that person. They didn't look right. They weren't the right age. It was like, well, what's going on here? This is crazy. But you have to shut up. And you have to let God choose. And I said, okay, if this is whom you've chosen, I will pay attention. And I did. I really, really did. And I paid attention for November, December, 3 months. And then I said, okay, I've paid attention. I see what you're showing me. I cannot hide any longer. I will come out of hiding. But this individual is not ready for me. And I have tried to have conversations, and they're terrified because they came after me. But after they came after me, they were like, well, good, what am I doing? And I understand that because I am very terrifying. I'm a lioness, and I can roar, and I do. I don't make it easy for men ever. So I set about a condition with the new moon. I said, okay, I need to move to a new level. I need this energy to be moved through by the end of the full moon. And I was listening and I was watching. And an hour before the full moon was over, someone who had been in my life called me out of the blue and just said, I'm ready. That was it. Know each other well, both dedicated in the work. That's how it happens. God chooses. If you pay attention and you do everything that you're supposed to do, then you will bring what it is that you desire. And you have to live in the present every day. You can't go worrying about, well, what's going to happen in the future. Just stay in the present. And every day, look at the lessons that you are learning. See how you can support and uplift that individual. And divinity will take care of the rest. So Marianne says that, after doing this prayer, that you write down the characteristics on a piece of paper of your personality that you most want transformed by the Holy Spirit. Now, that's a different approach than what I've done in my life. But in order to attract the person that you want, you have got to make sure that you have the same to offer. And that's what she's saying, is that you have to ask for spiritual transformation to be the kind of individual that you wish to attract into your life. And that sets up a vibratory rate that will allow that person to come to you. And that's exactly what I did. And she says that, and I really love this, she says, when you write these qualities down that you need to be transformed by the Holy Spirit, to be spiritually transformed, to be fine-tuned, to be polished, spiritually speaking, she says, own these things. Take responsibility for your defects and then surrender them to God. Ultimately, all work is inner work. Now you might wish to look around your house. Is it a place where your love would find comfort? Do we ever think like that? So we have to look at our own imperfections, our own weaknesses, and then you have to ask divinity to help you be better, to be stronger. And she suggests that you then look around your house and think, is this a place where your love would find comfort? Well, this is how divinity used to work with me. I would be allowed a certain period of celibacy, and then I would be told, okay, prepare, there's a man coming. And I would say, okay. And the first time I got the direction to go out and buy a robe and a pair of slippers, I thought, well, this is really crazy, but I always follow my intuition. And so I did that. Bought a robe, brought the slippers. I'm like, how am I supposed to know what size the slippers are going to be? But it was living in the present. Your beloved is already here. He's already here. You need to set the conditions for him to find his way here and to be comfortable. And I did that. And I was about to do it again because it became a pattern for me. And so I would, be in a relationship, and I wouldn't be in a relationship. I would be told to prepare, that it was time for me to come out of that celibacy, that I wasn't going to grow anymore being isolated. And I would get the robe and I would get the slippers and they would be there. And then I would just listen. I had this one experience. I have to share this with you because it's so crazy. I had gone to the dentist, and I think I had had 2 teeth pulled. And I was at home. I came from the dentist. I'm laying in my bed, and, they give you medication to take for the pain. I had no intention of going anywhere. I was all curled up in my bed, moving through the pain. And my intuition says, get up and get dressed and go out. And I said, I will not. I've just had 2 teeth pulled. I've taken this medication to stop the pain. I have no desire to go out. It was insistent. So in my pain, I got up, I got dressed, and I was told where to go. It was one of my favorite dancing spots, and it's like, I don't want to go dancing. I want to lay in my bed. But I got up. And I will never, ever forget this. So I go and I sit down. People were shocked because they never see me sitting down. If I'm coming to dance, I'm going to be dancing. I'm going to be coming in the door dancing. But I was sitting down and being quiet. And I happened to look up and I saw this man across the room who was looking, gazing dead at me. And he was literally across the room. And he began walking across the crowded floor. And he never took his eyes off me. I was like, what is happening right now? You made me get up out of my bed. I thought my mouth was hurting, but right now I'm in shock. And it's just be still. So I just sat there and he just kept coming slowly and steadily, gazing right into my eyes, and I could not move. So when he was standing in front of me, he said hello. I'm sure he asked me to dance, even though I wasn't in the mood. So we had a dance and we sat down and we began to talk to each other. Quite a fascinating man. And because I had been directed to do this, I said, I have to pay attention. This is none of my business. That's basically what I said. All right, I'm listening. I don't know what this is about, but okay. I trust divinity 100%. And I did something that I do not do. I went home with this man. And we stayed up all night long reading a book called Sexual Secrets, The Alchemy of Ecstasy. He is the one who introduced me to tantric sex. This is an incredible book. Maybe I'll try to find it on Amazon and share it with you. But this book begins by talking about the three creative sources and the creative aspects, the three aspects of the One, the Holy Trinity. But this is from the Hindu perspective. And so it talks about yoga, breathing, bathing. This was such an amazing experience to be able to have a conversation with a man who understood how I felt and what I had been seeking, because I didn't know anything about tantric sex at that time. So we stayed up all night long. And I went home. We remained friends for many, many years. We had one intimate experience, and I found out that he was in a relationship. He wasn't happy. And when you're not happy, this is why I'm telling you this story. When you're not happy, the universe is going to send energy to fill up that hole, that emotional hole. It is said that the universe abhors a hole. It abhors emptiness. It is always going to fill up that space with energy. And this is how couples break up. If you're in a relationship, whether it's a marriage or you're just living together, or even if you're just dating, if you're not paying attention to one another, If you're not communicating what's deep in your mind and deep in your heart and deep in your thoughts, then you're not satisfied in that relationship. There is no energetic connection. And many times we stay with that person because that person is safe, because that person can take care of us, because that person has all of the right things that will be viewed by society as success, and you feel proud being with that individual. But it doesn't stop that from being a whole. There's an emptiness that's inside you. And many times when one partner starts to go on the spiritual path or the mystical path, they end up breaking up because they have no resonance with that individual any longer, and that individual isn't interested in spirituality. They're not interested in religion. They're not interested in transformation. And so you can't stay together because there's no longer a resonance. That's how the universe works. It's not that people want to be unfaithful. It's that there's an emptiness, there's a hole, and the universe is impersonal. If you're not operating within the law, then the universe is going to try to bring it into balance. There are cosmic laws at work. So what you do is, if you find yourself being attracted to a member of the opposite sex, you say, now, why am I attracted to that individual? What is it that I do not have in my relationship that I need to discuss with my partner? And many times we don't want to do that. We just want to find fault with the partner. We want to judge that partner. We don't want to say, there's something wrong here. There's something missing here. And we have work to do. People don't know how to do the work. They don't even know how to articulate what it is that they're missing. And I would be out dancing, and I would attract a lot of married men. And they would tell you that they were married, but they were not happy, and their wife didn't understand them. And I was like, well, you got to go home and deal with that, because I don't get in relationships with married men. You obviously have things that you need to work out in your marriage. So go do that work. Then you won't be empty. You won't be longing. You won't be out here looking. And that's very difficult for people to do. They stay because of their obligations, and I totally understand that. Some stay simply because they're afraid. It takes a lot of courage to say, I'm not happy. But ultimately, it is not a piece of paper that makes a marriage. Never really is. It's that energetic connection. It's that resonance. And if that hole is there, if that resonance is not there, the universe is just going to keep sending candidates that are resonating with you. So you've really got to make sure that you choose a partner who's going to want to do the work. And if they're not willing to do the work, you're not going to have a successful relationship. That's just it in a nutshell. And I can say that because when you come to a certain understanding and you try to share that with someone else who is not on that level, who is not capable of understanding at that particular stage in their life, or have no desire to understand it, then you cannot have a successful relationship. I had a man who chased me, and we used to work together at on a television show, and he just would not give up. And so actually, I now remember it was on a Valentine's Day. And he took me to this exclusive wine bar on the Upper East Side of Manhattan. Very, very handsome man. Had modeled, bodybuilder, really gorgeous, but also very intriguing and extremely intelligent. And he wanted to know why I would not have sex with him. And I said, I don't just fall into bed with just any man. And he's like, but Francesca, you know me. And he stood up and he said, don't you want all of this? Do you know how many women want this? I started laughing. I said, I'm sorry. You're very handsome. And I know that there are other women who would be jumping up and down right now at the opportunity to be with you. But that's not how I select my partners. And he said, I know you're spiritual. And he said, listen, I will do yoga and chant Om and light candles and incense as long as you want. But you have to have sex with me first. I'm like, well, that's not going to work. That's not the way. That's not the way that I operate. And so many times, men only can understand spirituality through the sexual action. And that's why they're so driven. Women are completely different. Men are like matches. You strike a match, it's hot, it's on fire. That fire wants to set something else on fire. A woman is like a pot of water. You have to put that pot on the fire and take the time to bring it to a boil. And most men don't want to do that. They don't know how even. They don't even understand the concept. So in an intimate relationship, you have to understand, and here we go back to basic metaphysics, is that you have the male projective energy. Our physical anatomy is that way. The male projective energy is a match. Strike it, it immediately starts to burn. Women are water. It's that negative inward energy. So those two have to come together. And for a sacred romance to experience the mystical power of an intimate alchemy requires understanding these spiritual principles and seeing how they relate in the actual exchange of sexual energy. And so that's why I have mentioned tantric sex to you. Because for most people, it's all about the sex. They don't know how to go beyond that. But if you begin on the spiritual principles, the laws that govern the universe, all the keys are there, all the directions are there. You just have to be able to relate it. And that is not always comfortable. So let me read this again about how you want to prepare. Now you might wish to look around your house. Is it a place where your love would find comfort? Are there items here for his or her delight? Is there an area of your existence that would keep love away? You have to ask yourself this question. What is it in you that is putting up this wall, that is putting up this barrier? The universe wants you to have love. The universe wants that hole to be filled. The universe doesn't want any holes. So what are you doing? that brings that block. Deal with these things now, for his or her footsteps are near. Know that the beloved is trying to get to you. But if you're not doing your work of preparing, changing your environment, changing your mental attitude, changing your emotional resonance, they can't come. You've put up a barrier. You've set up a wall that no one can get through. So you really have to look carefully at yourself, and you have to deal with these things now. And Marianne says, the footsteps are near. You have to have that understanding that divinity wants you to have love, that divinity wants to express itself through that union. That is the ultimate experience. Divinity wants to express and experience life through us. Divinity wants to see through our eyes and hear through our ears and smell through our nose and taste through our mouth and feel with our touch. Because you are divine. You have that divine spark. You're connected. And divinity is longing to experience the world through you. And that is the reason you were created, to be a channel of divine expression. And when you realize that that union of coming together with your partner is the completion of that divine experience, then you experience divinity through your partner, and your partner experiences divinity through you, and it's a win-win situation. So Marianne says, be patient and be calm, for the hour is nigh for all of us. At any moment, you do not know who's going to cross your path. Someone you've never met, or someone you have known from long ago. But we have to have this readiness, and we must allow ourselves to have expectation. Let God choose your man. Let God choose your woman through the working of cosmic law. And then pay attention. I mentioned last week the film When Harry Met Sally. And in this film, there were two young people who met each other in college, and they stayed in touch off and on, and they didn't like each other in the beginning, and they watched each other go through these different relationships. And then eventually they came together, realizing that they had been brought together long ago, but they weren't seeing with divine eyes, or hearing with divine ears, or touching with divine hands, or speaking with divine words. That's why it took them so long. I love those stories, hearing about senior citizens who go looking for their high school loves and find them and marry them. I have heard incredible stories, and I just love when that happens, because they know that they should have been together, but something happened. They made a wrong choice. They didn't pay attention. They lost their window of opportunity. We do not want that to happen. So moving forward, just understand that this is what we're after. So after you have done this work and you think about exactly what it is that you want, and you've assessed whether or not you're worthy, you then wait and you be calm. So when I set that deadline to be fulfilled before the end of the day of the full moon, that other individual had to be attuned. He didn't know what I had set in motion. He didn't know that I had petitioned the cosmic for that guidance and direction. He did not know that I set up a 12 midnight deadline. Tell me what I need to do. Tell me what I'm doing wrong. Guide me, because I need to get on with my work. And I cannot do it alone at this stage. I don't want to leave this life without having completed that. I'm a Leo. So I am ruled by the heart, and love is the most important thing to me, always has been. I only wanted to be married to one man my entire life, and it broke my heart when I was not able to do that. But I had a lot of lessons to learn. And so I had to be humble, and I had to constantly be checking myself to see who I was attracting, because who you attract tells you what's going on with you. And this experience that I had proved to me that I'm always going to be young. I don't look my age, and that's always been an issue. If you saw me out dancing on a crazy floor, dance floor, in, absolute abandon, I could understand why younger men would approach me, because I didn't dance like I was the age that I am. And that's still true, and it's always going to be true. I've just finally given up. It's like, okay, I understand. I will never, ever be old. And the other thing that I understand is that I am an immortal. I will never die. I will take off this Francesca uniform at some point when I have done my work and fulfilled my obligation, and I'll put on another uniform, and I'll have another name, and I'll live in another country, and I'll speak another language, or maybe not. But that is the process that we go through in each incarnation. And if you don't believe in incarnation, that's your business. But if you want to find out about it, then learn how to meditate, learn how to get still, learn how to listen for that still small voice, which will whisper and tell you things. My first experience with reincarnation, laying across my bed, doing calligraphy, doodling, in my Khalil Gibran diary. I guess I was about a year out of college, and I had gone to a Catholic school because I'd always been spiritual, and I wanted to go to that kind of environment. Actually, at my school, it was Catholic schools, and the nuns were teaching, and it was wonderful for me because I had a very pure environment. I wasn't distracted by, boys running around and all that kind of thing. I could focus on my studies, and the only time I got in trouble is when I would sneak into the chapel to study for a test and sit up in the pulpit, or on the stairs ascending there. And that's what I call studying with God, and that's what I did. I wanted to go to the most serene place. I wanted to get that direction, that guidance. I wanted to be able to hear. And of course, they would chase me out, and then I understood. It took me a while to understand, but eventually I did understand that that's what it was about. So growing up as a young woman in that kind of experience really primed me for that spiritual experience. And so I was able to maintain that purity. And so I'm laying across my bed. I'm doodling in my Khalil Gibran journal. One of my favorite mystical poets is Khalil Gibran. Maybe I'll post something from Khalil Gibran tonight before I go to bed. Rumi's my main man, though. I love Rumi, but Khalil Gibran was my spiritual initiator. It was through studying Khalil Gibran that I really began my exploration. So I was laying across the bed and I was doodling, and I went into an altered state, and I saw myself as a slave girl, and I was pregnant. And my husband was being taken away from me in chains. And I could hear those chains. And I was distraught. And when I came out of that altered state, I had written a poem called Clayboy. That was my husband's name, Clayboy. And the last line in that poem said, "Lord, don't let those chains bleed his feet." When I read that poem, I did not remember writing that poem. That's when I knew that incarnation was real. And I went on to explore. That was really the beginning of my next level of psychic experiences, I would say. And I share that because you can know what has happened to you. You can look at your lessons and understand why certain things are happening in your life. We know there has been scientific proof. There have been many, many, many books written about reincarnation and telling stories of people who remember. Of course, in certain cultures, like the Hindu culture, where incarnation is accepted, children can tell their parents, their new parents, who their old parents were and where they used to live and all that kind of thing. So, beloved ones, this adventure that we're on, this exploration that we're doing in this lifetime, is to bring us into contact with our beloved so that we can continue our work. So we need to do that self-examination. Don't lose hope. Just prepare and listen for that still, small voice. And I'm going to end this session with a prayer that Marianne wrote, and she's writing it from the female perspective. And she says, "And I am all fitted now in a gown of light. My sisters and I have dancing shoes, and we dance most every night. Musicians play and we sing our songs and breathe life into the words. Our little sisters come and join us as we prepare the other world. Know you that we wait for you? We do. We do. And are you prepared to dance?" And then he comes. People had said you might meet him in this way or that. And when the day arrived, he just appeared. Funny, he's not who you would have thought capable of snatching your heart from your chest. Love is simpler than it appears in this complicated world of ours. The secret of love is to tell the beloved how wonderful he or she is, constantly and sincerely, at least 1,000,000 times every day. Give, and then give some more, and then give a little bit more than that. That is our journey, beloved ones. If you wish to experience the mystical power of intimate relationships, then you must dance with divinity. You must purify yourself by self-examination, by honesty, by vulnerability, by seeking deeply, earnestly, and almost desperately to fulfill your mission in this lifetime. And when you do that, you will be led, you will be guided, and the beloved one who's already trying to make their way to you will suddenly appear. And it may not be who you thought, who could snatch your heart out of your chest. Don't you just love that? So let us just take a quick moment and close this session just with a little bit of deep breathing and a short prayer. If you don't mind, I'll take an extra 5 minutes. So both feet flat on the floor, hands on your lap, palms down. Take a deep breath in through the nose. Breathe out through the mouth with a sigh. In through the nose. Out through the mouth with a sigh. In through the nose. Out through the mouth with a sigh. And continue breathing deeply and slowly and rhythmically. And instantaneously see yourself surrounded by a silvery white light, so that you are totally immersed in this light. Every single cell, tissue, muscle, and bone within your being is in vibration with this light. Know that this is divine love that fills you and surrounds you and guides you, that supports you and encourages you and heals you, that lifts you up and loves you, and whose greatest desire is to see you happy and feeling loved on this earth. Beloved God of our hearts, God of our realization, we give thanks, we give thanks, we give thanks for this opportunity to come together and join our light. We humbly ask that we may continue to absorb these words so beautifully written by Marianne Williamson. We give thanks that this soul was sent to earth to write with such clarity, with such intimacy, with such honesty, with such love, and with a realization of thy divine presence, seeking to bring us the love we deserve. We ask at this time that we may radiate love throughout our hearts, that we may radiate this love out into the world, that this love may soothe those who are in pain, that this love may provide protection for those who do not feel safe, that this love may shine a light on those who are in the darkness of depression, that this love may be a healing force for those who are suffering from COVID-19 and other diseases, that this love may comfort the lonely, that this love may give confidence to those who doubt that they are worthy of love. We give thanks for this love we receive daily, moment by moment, from thy heart and mine. And it is our humble prayer that we may be in resonance with thy divine will and be willing to step into the fire of purification so that we may emerge and claim the love that you have waiting for us. This is our humble prayer as we send our love to you. So be it. Amen. Continue breathing deeply and slowly and rhythmically. And find your way back into the consciousness of your body, giving thanks for being able to be an instrument of love and peace. And open your eyes when you're ready. Thank you, beloved ones, for sharing this time with me. Please know that you are loved. Know that you are appreciated. And that all is always in divine order. And of course, you know I love you, right? Mwah. The love is coming. The love is there already. Open your arms and receive it. Bye for now.